Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to make over some wooden boxes, and I actually have a couple like this one. I'm sure that you guys have seen them. I see them all the time at thrift stores, and but I just buy them because I like to make over wooden boxes or wooden items. These are cigar boxes. But I'm just showing you some different ones that I have, and again, I'm going to make them over. Some of these are pretty on their own, but I'm going to be making them all over. Many of these are very rough. Now, obviously, the first thing I need to do is clean all of these and remove any stickers. And then I went through and gave each of these a coat of Gatorhide. And this box, I had two of these, and these were the main reason that I wanted to give these a coat of the Gatorhide. But I will say that Gatorhide was no match for these because I got this red bled through and made the inside of these boxes and partially the outside pink, so I ended up having to fix that. So if you're thinking of using Gatorhide on this type of box, then I would use a stronger product like shellac to make sure that you don't get bleed through. And then after I put one coat of the Gatorhide on these, then I decided to go through and paint all of them in the color buttercream. Now, that's not the color that I'm going to end up with most of these, but I just wanted to give them one good coat of something to even them out and make them easier to paint. And I know that maybe some of you are screaming at me now, please don't paint over that, because these boxes are really neat. But I just don't have any connection to cigar boxes. And I bought these with the purpose in mind of making them over. Now for this first one, I started in one direction with it and then quickly changed my mind. But I thought about using this rice paper here on it, and then decided that I wanted to do something different and add a handle to this one, in which case my picture wouldn't be in the right direction. You'll see that here in a bit, but I wanted to paint the inside of this in the color burlap, and because it went well with this rice paper. But I ended up using another rice paper that looked just as good with this burlap color. And this one I decided to go ahead and use the color buttercream on the outside, so I just did another coat of buttercream on the outside and let that dry well before I added my rice paper. Now, I think that the paper that I have here laying beside of me that I didn't use, and also the one that I'm going to use, I think I got both of those from Decoupage Central, so I'll add their link in the description. I'm not sure that they still have these, but I'm going to add that in the description because they do have a lot of really pretty papers. And I decided on this one, and it has one large picture and then two small ones. But I had two sheets of this, and because I wanted to add an image to both the front and the back of this one because of adding the handle to it. I'm going to be adding a handle to one side of it, which will then be the top of this box. And because of that, I felt like it needed an image on both the front and the back. And you could cut these out instead of tearing them like I am, but I just prefer the look of tearing them versus cutting. Now the glue that I'm using on this is going to be the matte finish Mod Podge. You could also use just regular Elmer school glue, and or you could use polyacrylic or some sort of top coat, but I'm just using regular matte finish Mod Podge. And I know that this has gotten crumpled from the tearing, but don't worry about that at all, because if you haven't used rice paper, you will be pleasantly surprised with how very easy it is to work with and how very forgiving it is. And I think the reason that it does so well is because it is very porous, and the air doesn't get trapped underneath it when you're trying to smooth it out. So again, I put one of these images on each side, and I wanted to make sure that when the box was standing up with the handle on the top, that these would both be upright. And I don't know how well you can see this rice paper, but I love the neutral yet dainty look of it, and I love the script there in the background, and because of that I wanted to kind of mimic that on the inside. And I have some craft paper that's already stamped on that is the color of the inside, so that's what I'm going to be putting there, but it's also pre-stamped with the IOD stamp called Kindest Regards, and that's one that is retired, and I don't think you can find it anymore. So if you own one, protect it, because I don't know that you'll be able to buy another one. And if you don't, I'm so sorry. I wish I could link that one in the description, because it's one that I use pretty frequently. Although for this particular project, any script stamping would work. And I also don't mind that this paper for the inside is also a little crumpled, because if there is any wrinkles, I don't mind that look at all for the inside. I think it just adds a little bit more character. Now, I'm not going to bother to cover the sides. I'm showing you my hand there because for some reason, my sister and I both got this red ink all over our hands, and we cannot locate its source. And we first noticed it because it was getting on something from Tammy, and I told her she had blood on her hands, and she said, "No, I think that's ink." And then, as it turns out, I had it on mine also. But what I was saying is, I'm just going to use this paper on the bottom surface of both the top and the bottom and the lid. I'm not going to worry with covering the sides, because the color that I used here will coordinate really well with this. I've even seen people with this type of paper just really crumple it up so that it adds some texture, and I could have done that here, but I think I got just the right amount to suit me. And I'm just using that same Mod Podge and going over the top of this also, so that it would protect that paper surface. Now I'm using a cast iron drawer pull on this, and it's some that at one time I bought wholesale. Don't have access to those anymore, but I still have some of them, and I want to use one on the top, and it's almost black but almost iron colored, so I thought that would be a good color since there is the gray there on this paper. So, but I wanted to bring out this detail, and I also wanted to bring some of that light back into this. So I'm first using white wax, and that will settle down into the detail and bring it out. But I didn't want this to be a stark white detail because I have the darker colors in my box. So I used that same color buttercream. Once I got this white wax wiped off, then I went over it with just some of that buttercream like I was painting it. And then I used a cloth and wiped that off and got the right amount of color in my white wax. And then after I attached this with dark screws, then I went over them with the buttercream and then wiped that off to blend that in. And I didn't mention here that I took my finger sander and just kind of sanded around the edges and high spots on this to give it more of a distressed look. And then once everything was dry, then I sprayed the whole thing with a clear matte top coat to finish it off. And then my first box is complete. Now this was one of the boxes, as you can see, that I got bleed through. So the way I took care of it was I spray painted the inside in this color of pink. I can't think of what the name of this is, but I will find it and link it in the description. So I painted the inside this color, and the outside I'm going to be covering with this scrapbook paper. But the paper that I had didn't reach all the way across, and it gave me an idea. I just tore one edge off. I did this on the front and the back and added that on, and then I'm going to do something else with that other side kind of layered over that. Now I'm sorry that I'm very badly out of focus here. I didn't realize my camera was so off, but I'm just going to glue that on all sides. Now the sides of this will get covered completely, but then again I just tore a place off the front and the opposite side of the back and just covered this with the scrapbook paper. And as you can see, there was an area there on the lid in the back that I'm going to have to touch up later with the color buttercream. Now I know that this paper is not a match to the pink that's inside, but I'm going to take care of that when I do the aging on the box, and it will blend a lot better. So generally what I would use for the next step is joint compound. But I have some people working in my kitchen and they needed the joint compound, so I had to take it to them, and what I had today was textured paint. So I just mix baking soda with my paint until I get the thickness that I want, almost like joint compound for this next step. And as you can see, I'm not measuring at all. I just keep adding until I get the thickness that I need. And it's now that I'm realizing that I didn't use buttercream on this box. I actually used the color dropcloth because I used the color buttercream in this so that there would be a slight difference in the color. So dropcloth was my background color on the box, and then I used buttercream here for this technique. So what you need for this technique is any stencil that is a little more detailed. And I love the dainty look of this one, and I will try to find that one and add it in the description. But as you can see, it just leaves you some raised detail. And I just love this look, and it looks so pretty, I think, layered over that paper. And I also did some of this same detailing on the lid. Now, you don't have to be precise with this at all. You just want to keep it just as neat as you can, but you're not going to get a perfect image, especially when you're not working with a completely perfect flat surface. Now the tool that I'm using here, I will look up and add in the description. My friend Paula gave me this one, and I forget what it's called, but again, I will try to find this and add it in the description. But as you can see there, just that faint detail on the top, even though the color is close to the same, it just adds a lot of dimension to it. And I'm going to be clear coating this all when it dries, and then going back over it with some Van Dyke Brown glaze, and that will bring that out a lot better. And here I am adding just a little bit more detail on the other side. I don't need much, but I felt like it needed a little something there. And I also did that in the back as well. Now, if you don't have this tool and you don't want to purchase this tool, it is a little costly, then you can just use a scraper for it, or a regular spatula, or even a tongue depressor. So you don't have to purchase these expensive tools, and this is one that I probably wouldn't have spent the money on myself. But my friend had an extra one, so she brought it to me. Now here I've already clear coated this, and now I'm going over it with some Van Dyke Brown glaze. And while I love the look that this gives, I probably should have did another coat of the clear coat over the scrapbook paper before I did this to it, because it spotted somewhat. So I ended up having to add some other touches to distract from that. And as you can see, that paper still, even after clear coating it, is really taking that in. So I just didn't get quite the even look that I was going for. As you can see there, it's those little spots are starting to show up. But I'm not worried about that. I'm just going to add some other things to this, and it will just add to that aged look. And I just made it work. You know, as crafters, we have to do that sometimes, and sometimes we end up with a better result than we meant in the beginning. Now the first thing I did to try to hide that was some script stamping, and I just used some gray ink because I wanted it to be faint, but as you can see, you still can see some of that, so that's just one layer that is going to help, but I'm obviously not going to stop at that. And I couldn't get the video to upload on that part, but I just added some little decals here and there just to give it more of a layered kind of junk journal look. And then it went well with the aged look of the paper. Now this next box is just like the last one. I've already added a coat of shellac to this and just repainted it. So I am now going to make this one look more masculine, since the other one was very feminine. And I first wanted to do some striping on it, and the center stripe was going to be the size of this tape. But I decided, first of all, that I got this a little bit crooked and end up having to move it a little bit, and I taped down each side of these just a little bit, overlapping, so that I can build my stripe the width that I want it. Now I could have used a thicker tape here, but I didn't have any, and I'm just going to make this the width that it needs to be. And after I get it the right width, then I'm going to tape another piece on either side of it, just beside it. Now, I don't want to overlap here, but I do want to butt it right up next to that one. And I'm going to do that on each side so that I can take the tape in the center away, and that will be the stencil for my first stripe. So again, I'm just taping this down either side right up next to it, and then I'll remove the center piece. And then I want to press on what's left and make sure that it's a tight fit so that my paint doesn't get underneath that and bleed. And now I've decided that that first stripe is a little wider than I want it. So I just need to go back over this just a little bit on each side and make that stripe a little more narrow. I think that possibly this video, I had more mistakes on my projects than any video that I've done, but I managed to make it work, and again, that's just what we do, and sometimes my projects end up in the trash, and one of the boxes that I'm doing today may end up there. Not this one. I ended up making this one over to where I was really happy with it, but one that I'll be doing later, I just couldn't get happy with it. I'm going to go ahead and include it because I want you guys to see that it happens to all of us, and just because I don't like it doesn't mean that someone else won't, but I'm not going to give it much of a chance before it ends up in the trash because I certainly don't want to fool with that one anymore. Now I'm using the color French Linen on this, and I'm just using a regular foam brush and just dabbing that on there until I get it covered. Now if you want to go back and do a second coat, then just let your first coat dry and go back over it with the second coat. I think I did that here actually. But once you get that enough on that you're happy with, then you just pull that tape away and you have your stripe. Now they do make stencils for these, but I just don't really like the way they work. And it's funny that I ended up with a stripe not much wider than the piece of tape that I started with here. So now I want to create a space between my stripe and the next stripe. But because I want the space to be a little smaller than the stripe that I started with, I need to let that dry well so that I can overlap that stripe to make the stencil for my next one. And then I added an additional piece of tape beside each of those, just far enough away from it that I wanted my next stripe to be. I hope that makes sense to you. I'm just creating spaces here to stencil my striping on. And then I just remove all the tape and I have my 3 stripes. Now you could go on and add another stripe, or you could create a tiny stripe between the 2 outer ones if you wanted. That would be pretty. You could do it in a different color if you wanted, but that's enough for me because I'm going to be adding another stencil on here. Now this is a Dixie Belle screened stencil, and I really like this one. Now I will say with this type, it is very easy to get clogged. So when you finish using it, and I'm going to be using this with paint. You can also use it with ink, but I'm going to be using paint. And when you use it, make sure that you always wash it out really well with warm soapy water, because that's a very, it's more of a screen for that to go through, and it's very easy to clog that screen. But if you keep it as clean as possible, then it works really well and you'll get a really crisp, detailed image. Now I want, because this says Old Rusty Truck, I want, and I think that rust color will look really good with the gray. So I'm going to mix the color Terracotta, and that's a Dixie Belle color, with just a little bit of gray, and it will give this more of a rusty color, and that's what I'm going to use for my paint. So I'm just starting with the color terracotta and just adding a little dab of gray until I'm happy with the color. And then I'm just using my little round foam brush and working that into the screen really well. And I really like the color that I got. I think that it ends up being really close to rust, and it does turn out really good with the gray. And as I said before, I already painted the inside gray, so I didn't show that in the video, but the inside is gray. And once I do this, I don't think this needs anything at all except a clear finish. And you have to be really careful that you hold that lid together. So Tammy is holding it for me, but lucky for me, it didn't mess up, and I was happy with how it turned out. Now this is the box that I just couldn't get satisfied with. So this is one of the cigar boxes. I've already painted the inside in the same color the outside is. And this is, I wanted to make this a Christmas box. And I know it's early, but I do need to start on my Christmas. I have started on some. I just haven't done videos because I feel like a lot of you will think that it's entirely too early. But I am going to be starting soon. And this is some paper that my friend Myra sent me. And she got this from Decoupage Central. And I will add that in the description. But while I do really like this one, I just had all sorts of problems with this box. So I'm going to decoupage that on the front, and I thought it was laying really smooth, and for some reason it got some bubbles in it, and I just couldn't get it right. But so that was my first problem. And then I added some scrapbook paper around the sides of it, and I liked it, didn't love it, and so this is just one that's just kind of okay. And I'm not going to show the whole process. As you can see, I stenciled the word Merry Christmas on the front. But again, and I didn't mention that I painted around the edges green because I just felt like it needed something. Again, still not very happy with it. Now this next box is pretty rough. I've had it for a while and just never could decide what to do with it. It needed some gluing, so I took the hinges off and glued some areas back together and gave it a good sanding. And now I'm gonna paint this in the color dropcloth. And I was able to paint this without any bleed through after I used a couple coats of a Rustoleum clear matte finish. So once I got everything painted, and I do go back and paint the inside, and I forgot to mention here that the lid on this I painted in the color burlap, and I think I painted the inside also in the color burlap. So it got drop cloth on the bottom and burlap on the lid and on the inside. And then I took a regular sponge and dabbed one side of it in the color drop cloth and the other side in the color burlap, and just very lightly brushed it across the sides. And this only took seconds. As you can see here, I haven't glued my seams yet on this box, but I'll go back and do that. So the transfers that I'm going to use on this box and the next one are an IOD set called Fairy Merry Christmas, and I'm just going to add some of those to both of these boxes. And they're actually a Christmas stencil, but they don't really seem to me like they're limited to Christmas. Maybe some are, but the ones that I'm going to be using aren't very limited. So I picked some of the transfers from that set, and I'm going to add them to different places on the box. And I had some extra bits and pieces from some other transfers that I was gifted, and just kind of placed them also here and there. And then I put all my hinges and hardware back on, and then I decided to add a handle to the top of this one, and I'm using the same handle for this one that I used on the first project. And since the hinges are like an antique brass color, I'm trying to create that look on the handle that I put on the top. So I'm adding some gold and also some bronze, and the two of those together will give this, I'm not worried about full coverage here, but the two of these together will give this more of an antique brass look. And I didn't mention that I also stenciled the word grow on it and the word bloom. And I just felt this could be used as a little garden box, or if for no other reason, just to store things in. And I know I said that was my last one, but this one more box I did with these transfers also. And all I had to do with this one was paint the box in the color burlap, and then add this one transfer to the very top. And after I added that, then I did some light distressing with with my finger sander, and then finished it off with Dyke Brown glaze. And that Dyke Brown glaze just settled in all the detail, and I just didn't feel like this one needed anything else. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening, and God bless you and your family.